The champagne flute trembled slightly in my hand as Marcus Thornton leaned closer, his cologne thick enough to choke on. We were standing in the corner of Sarah's apartment, away from the celebration she'd just gotten promoted to lead teacher at Riverside Elementary. Everyone else was laughing, eating the catered food Marcus had insisted on paying for. But his voice, when it came, was ice cold. "Robert," he said, using my first name like we were old friends instead of barely acquaintances of 6 months, "I'm going to need that $250,000 we discussed. By the end of next week, I hadn't discussed any such thing." I took a sip of champagne, letting the bubbles buy me a second to keep my expression neutral. 33 years as a Portland PD detective had taught me that much never let them see you react. "That's quite a sum," I said evenly. Marcus smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "It's an investment opportunity. My hedge fund. Financial consulting firm," I corrected quietly. His jaw tightened. "My firm has a position opening up. Guaranteed 18% returns in the first year, but the minimum buy-in is $250. I'm offering you a chance to secure Sarah's future." Through the doorway, I could see my daughter. Sarah was laughing at something her friend Jennifer had said, her whole face lighting up the way it had since she was 6 years old. She wore the pearl earrings her mother had left her. Elizabeth had been gone 3 years now, cancer taking her 6 months after her diagnosis. "Sarah doesn't know you're asking me this, does she?" Marcus's smile sharpened. "Sarah doesn't need to know everything about how men handle business. But Robert, here's the thing." He set his own glass down on the bookshelf, and I noticed his watch, a Rolex Submariner, probably 20 grand. "I love your daughter. I want to marry her, but I need to know her family is willing to invest in our future together. Otherwise," he shrugged, "I can't build a life with someone whose family doesn't believe in me." The threat was clear. Give me the money, or I walk away and break Sarah's heart. "I'll think about it," I said. "You do that." Marcus clapped me on the shoulder, a touch too hard. "But don't think too long. This opportunity won't last forever, and neither will my patience." He walked away, sliding seamlessly back into the party, slipping his arm around Sarah's waist. She beamed up at him, and the trust in her eyes made my chest ache. I'd been a detective long enough to recognize a con when I saw one. The first time Sarah had brought Marcus home was 4 months ago, Valentine's Day. She'd been single for 2 years after a brutal breakup with her college boyfriend, and I'd watched her close herself off, throw herself into teaching, convince herself she was better off alone. So when she'd called me breathless with excitement, saying she'd met someone amazing, I'd been happy for her. Marcus had shown up with flowers for Sarah and a bottle of Macallan 18 for me. He'd dressed well-tailored suit, perfect hair, the kind of polished appearance that probably cost a fortune to maintain. Over dinner, he'd told us about his financial consulting firm, dropping names of supposedly wealthy clients, talking about his Harvard MBA. "Where did you say you went to undergrad?" I'd asked. "Princeton," he'd said without hesitation. "Class of 2010. Sarah had glowed. Her mother had gone to Princeton, but something had nagged at me even then. The way he'd avoided direct questions about his work. The way his stories about his clients were always vague on specifics. The way he'd steered every conversation back to Sarah, asking about her life, her job, her friends, and her family. "Your father must have a good pension," he'd said at one point. 33 years on the force? Portland PD takes care of their own." I'd noticed how his eyes had lingered when Sarah mentioned I'd sold the family house and downsized after Elizabeth died. How he'd asked, casually, if I'd invested the proceeds. I'd filed it all away. Old habits. Now, watching him at the party, watching how he never let Sarah stray far from his side, how he interrupted whenever she started talking to someone without him, I felt the old instincts kick into high gear. After the party ended and I'd driven home to my small condo in the Pearl District, I sat at my kitchen table with my laptop and started digging. It's amazing what you can find when you know where to look. I still had friends in the department. I still had access to databases, and I still remembered how to follow a trail. Marcus Thornton, age 37. That part was true. But the Harvard MBA? Couldn't find any record of it. Princeton undergrad? Nothing. I called an old buddy who worked university security at Princeton. He ran the name for me as a favor. No Marcus Thornton in the class of 2010, he said, or 2008, 2009, 2011. I went 5 years in either direction. Nothing. I thanked him and kept digging. Marcus had a LinkedIn profile that looked impressive at first glance. Thornton Capital Management, founder and senior portfolio manager. But when I started looking up the clients he'd mentioned, I found something interesting. 3 of them were real people, wealthy people, but none of them had ever worked with Marcus Thornton. I found one of them on Facebook and sent a message, pretending to be a potential client asking for a reference. The response came back within an hour. I've never heard of Marcus Thornton. Please don't contact me again. My stomach tightened. I kept searching. Court records next. I found 2 small claims cases filed against Marcus in the past 5 years, both by women, both claiming he'd borrowed money, $20,000 in one case, $35,000 in the other, and never paid it back. Both cases had been settled out of court. I found their names and spent the next 3 days tracking them down. The first woman, Angela Morrison, hung up when I mentioned Marcus's name, but the second one, Jennifer Chen, was willing to talk. "Are you his father?" she asked when I called. "No, he's dating my daughter." There was a long silence. Then, "I'm sorry." We met for coffee at a Starbucks in Beaverton. Jennifer was 34, a nurse at OHSU. Pretty, with tired eyes that had seen too much disappointment. "I met Marcus 3 years ago on a dating app," she said, stirring her latte without drinking it. "He was charming, attentive. He seemed successful, always dressed well, always picked nice restaurants. He told me he was a financial consultant, that he managed portfolios for high-net-worth clients. The same story he'd told Sarah. 2 months in, he started talking about his business, how he had this incredible opportunity, but he needed capital. He asked me to invest $30,000. Guaranteed returns, he said. 20% in the first year. "Let me guess," I said. "You never saw the money again." She shook her head. He kept making excuses. The investment was taking longer to mature. There were regulatory delays. He just needed a few more months. Then 6 months. Then a year. When I finally threatened to take him to court, he paid me back $10,000 and disappeared. I never got the rest. "Did you report him to the police?" I tried. They said it was a civil matter. Besides, he'd technically paid back part of it. They couldn't prove fraud. She looked at me, and her eyes were red. "He's doing it again, isn't he? To your daughter?" "He's trying." "Stop him," she said. "Please." I was stupid, but I was alone. "If he's targeting someone who has family, someone who has people who care about her." She trailed off. "Just stop him." I promised her I would. Over the next 2 weeks, I built my case like I used to build cases for the DA. I hired a private investigator, my old partner's daughter, who'd followed in her father's footsteps. She was good, thorough. She found more. Marcus had been engaged twice before. Both times, the engagements had ended shortly after the women's families had refused to invest in his business ventures. She found his real educational background, community college, no degree. She found a gambling problem. Marcus was a regular at the Chinook Winds Casino, often losing thousands in a single night. She found evidence that Thornton Capital Management was nothing but a website and a mail drop. She found bank statements showing Marcus was $73,000 in debt. And she found text messages. Marcus was still in contact with his most recent ex-girlfriend, telling her to be patient, that he'd pay her back as soon as the current deal closed. The current deal was my daughter. I documented everything, printed it out, put it in a folder that grew thicker by the day. And I watched Sarah fall deeper in love with a man who was systematically positioning himself to rob her blind. The hardest part was not warning her immediately. But I knew my daughter. Sarah was loyal to a fault, trusting, convinced she could see the good in everyone. If I went to her without ironclad proof, she'd defend him. She'd think I was being paranoid, overprotective. She'd choose him over me, at least at first. And that would give Marcus the opening he needed to isolate her further, to marry her quickly, to get his hands on her modest savings, and through her access to mine. No, I needed to wait for the right moment. And Marcus, obligingly, gave it to me. 3 weeks after Sarah's promotion party, she called me. "Dad, Marcus proposed. Her voice was so full of joy, it physically hurt to hear it. Congratulations, sweetheart, I said, and meant it. She deserved happiness, just not with him. We're having an engagement party next Saturday. Just close friends and family. Will you come? Of course I will. Dad, her voice softened. I know you've been quiet about Marcus. I know you're protective. But he's a good man. He loves me, and I love him. Can you please try to be happy for me? I closed my eyes. Sarah, I'm always happy when you're happy. I'll be there. The week before the party, Marcus called me. Robert, have you thought about that investment opportunity? I have. And let's talk about it at the engagement party. I'll have an answer for you then. I could hear the smile in his voice. That's what I like to hear. Family supporting family. This is going to be great for all of us, Robert. You'll see. After he hung up, I made one more call to Jennifer Chen. I need a favor, I said. The engagement party was at Sarah's apartment again. She decorated with string lights and photos of her and Marcus at the coast, at Powell's bookstore, at various restaurants around Portland. In every picture, she looked radiant. In every picture, Marcus's smile was just a little too practiced. I arrived early with a bottle of champagne and a wrapped gift, a set of kitchen knives Sarah had wanted, and a laptop bag containing my laptop and a small projector. Dad! Sarah hugged me tight. Thank you for coming. Thank you for being here. Wouldn't miss it, sweetheart. Marcus was holding court near the kitchen, talking to Sarah's friends about his business. I noticed he'd upgraded his watch. Now he was wearing a Patek Philippe, easily $40,000. Where had that money come from? I sat up quietly in the corner, connecting my laptop to Sarah's TV. She had an Apple TV setup, which made it easy. No one paid attention to me, just the father of the bride-to-be, fiddling with technology. At 8 o'clock, Marcus called for everyone's attention. 30 people quieted down, champagne glasses in hand. I want to thank you all for being here tonight, Marcus said, his arm around Sarah's waist. 6 months ago, I met the most incredible woman I've ever known. Sarah is kind, brilliant, beautiful, and she makes me want to be a better man. Sarah's eyes were shining. Her friend Jennifer, different Jennifer, not Chen, was wiping away tears. I'm not a man who believes in waiting when I know what I want. Life is too short. So I asked Sarah to marry me. And somehow, miraculously, she said yes. Laughter, applause. Sarah kissed him, and I felt sick. But tonight isn't just about celebrating our love, Marcus continued. It's about family. It's about the future we're building together. Sarah's father, Robert, has been a rock for her, especially after her mother passed. And I'm honored that he's chosen to support our future by investing in our life together. He was boxing me in, announcing it publicly before I'd actually agreed, making it impossible for me to refuse without looking like I didn't support my own daughter. Sarah looked at me, confused. Dad? What's he talking about? I stood up. Actually, I think there's been some miscommunication. Marcus, why don't we clear this up? His face tightened, but he kept smiling. Of course, Robert's being modest. He's agreed to invest in Thornton Capital Management, which will help secure Sarah's future. Our future. How much? Sarah asked me, still confused. Dad, you didn't have to. $250,000, Marcus said smoothly. A significant investment, but one that will pay dividends for years to come. The room had gone quiet. Everyone was watching. That is a significant sum, I said. I picked up my laptop. Marcus, before we finalize anything, I wanted to share something with everyone. You've told Sarah so much about your business, your background. I thought it might be nice for everyone to see the kind of man she's marrying. Sarah smiled, thinking I was about to show something sweet. A slideshow, maybe. Photos. Marcus's smile had frozen. I turned on the projector. The screen filled with Marcus's LinkedIn page. Marcus told us he went to Princeton, class of 2010. He told us he has an MBA from Harvard. I clicked to the next slide. An email from Princeton University's registrar. Princeton has no record of Marcus Thornton ever attending. Harvard Business School says the same. Sarah's smile was fading. Dad, what are you? Let me finish, sweetheart. Please. I looked at her, and my heart broke at the confusion in her eyes. But I kept going. Next slide. The court records. Marcus has been sued twice by former girlfriends for borrowing money and not returning it. Both women claimed he told them he needed the money for business investments. Neither saw their money again. That's a lie, Marcus said, but his voice lacked conviction. Those were settled. Settled out of court because you paid back a fraction of what you owed, I said. Angela Morrison lent you $20,000. You paid back $5,000. Jennifer Chen lent you $35,000. You paid back $10,000. I clicked to the next slide. Bank statements. These are your bank records from the past 2 years. You're $73,000 in debt, most of it from casino gambling. Sarah had gone pale. Marcus? And this, I said, clicking to the final slide, are text messages between you and your ex-girlfriend, Vanessa Priest, from 3 weeks ago, the same week you proposed to Sarah. You told Vanessa to be patient, that you'd pay her back once the deal with the rich cop's daughter closed. The room was dead silent. That's not Marcus started, but I cut him off. I'm a retired detective, Marcus. I know how to build a case. Everything I'm showing here is documented, verified, and legally obtained. Thornton Capital Management doesn't exist except as a website. You have no clients. You have no business. You're a con artist who targets women, pretends to love them, and steals their money. Sarah's hand had gone to her mouth. Tears were streaming down her face, but she wasn't looking away from the screen. The only question I have, I said, looking directly at Marcus, is whether you want me to take this evidence to the district attorney or whether you want to walk away right now and never contact my daughter again. Marcus's face had gone from charm to rage to calculation in the span of seconds. He looked at Sarah, opened his mouth, closed it, looked at the crowd of witnesses, looked at me, and then he ran. Not walked, ran, grabbed his coat and ran out of the apartment like the coward he was. The door slammed behind him. For a moment, no one moved. Then Sarah's knees buckled, and I caught her before she fell. She sobbed into my chest, her whole body shaking, while her friends gathered around us. I'm sorry, she kept saying. I'm so sorry. I didn't see it. I should have seen it. You have nothing to be sorry for, I told her fiercely. Nothing. He was good at this. He'd done it before. You're not stupid for trusting someone who said he loved you. That's not a flaw, Sarah. That's beautiful. Don't let him take that from you. Her friend, Jennifer, Sarah's friend, had pulled out her phone. I'm deleting his number from your phone, blocking him on everything. If he tries to contact you, we call the police. The other friend, Michael, was already gathering up the photos of Sarah and Marcus. We'll get rid of these. Every single one. Sarah clung to me for a long time. The party dissolved around us, people hugging Sarah, offering support, shooting dark looks at the closed door. Someone ordered pizza. Someone else opened more wine. It turned into a different kind of gathering. Not a celebration of an engagement, but a rally around someone who'd been hurt. Around midnight, after everyone else had left, Sarah and I sat on her couch. She was exhausted, red-eyed, but calmer. How long did you know? She asked quietly. I suspected from the beginning. I knew for certain 3 weeks ago. Why didn't you tell me sooner? I chose my words carefully. Because I know you, sweetheart. If I'd come to you without proof, you would have defended him. You would have thought I was just being an overprotective father. And he would have used that. He would have convinced you I was trying to control you, trying to keep you from being happy. He would have isolated you from me, and then you would have been alone with him. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, you're right, I would have chosen him, at least at first. She looked at me. How did you know to wait? 33 years of watching people lie to me taught me patience. And loving you taught me that sometimes the hardest thing a parent can do is watch their child head toward danger and not grab them, because grabbing them will only make them run faster. Sometimes you have to let them get close enough to the edge to see the drop themselves. That's a terrible metaphor. Your mother was better with words. I pulled her close. But the point stands. I had to wait until I could show you the truth in a way you couldn't deny. I had to wait until he'd committed himself publicly, so he couldn't talk his way out of it. Sarah was quiet again. Then, I feel so stupid. You're not stupid. You're kind. There's a difference. I really loved him, Dad. Or I thought I did. I know. How do I trust anyone again? That was the question that broke my heart. Because I knew Elizabeth would have had the perfect answer. Something wise and warm that would have made Sarah feel better. All I had was the truth. You don't stop trusting people, I said, because the alternative is living your whole life afraid, and that's no life at all. But you learn. You look for the red flags. You don't ignore your instincts when something feels wrong. You don't rush. And you remember that people who really love you don't ask you to prove it with money. She nodded against my shoulder. Will you stay tonight? Of course. I slept on her couch, listening to her cry quietly in her bedroom, wishing I could take the pain away, and knowing I couldn't. The best I could do was make sure Marcus Thornton never got the chance to hurt her again. In the morning, I made coffee and scrambled eggs, while Sarah shuffled into the kitchen in her robe, looking like she'd aged 10 years overnight. I called in sick to work, she said. Good. Take the time you need. She sat at the table, staring at her coffee. What happens now? To Marcus? That's up to you. We have enough evidence to press charges for fraud, maybe attempted fraud. The text messages alone might be enough, but it would mean going to the police, making statements, possibly testifying. I don't want to see him again. Then we don't press charges. We let him go, and we hope he's smart enough to stay away. What if he does this to someone else? I'd been thinking about that. I have the evidence. I can send it to the police anyway. Let them decide if they want to investigate. I can also send it to the state licensing board. He's claiming to be a financial consultant without proper licenses. And I can send it to his previous victims so they know he's still operating. Sarah nodded slowly. Do that. All of it. I don't want revenge, but I don't want him to hurt anyone else either. I'll take care of it. She looked at me, and despite the exhaustion and pain in her eyes, there was something else there too. Gratitude, trust. Thank you for protecting me, Dad, even when I didn't know I needed it. I reached across the table and took her hand. That's what fathers do, even when their daughters are grown, even when they think they don't need protecting anymore. We watch, we wait, and when the moment comes, we step in. Mom would be proud of you. Your mother would have handled this better than I did. I don't think so. Sarah squeezed my hand. I think you were exactly what I needed. 6 months later, Sarah met someone new. His name was David. He taught history at the same school where she taught, and he drove a 10-year-old Honda Civic and lived in a modest apartment. On their third date, he told her he had student loans he was still paying off. He didn't ask her about my pension. He didn't ask her to invest in anything. When she brought him home for dinner, I liked him immediately. Not because he was perfect, no one is, but because he was genuine. He looked Sarah in the eye when he talked to her. He listened when she spoke. He offered to help clean up after dinner without being asked. After he left, Sarah looked at me. Well, I like him. Really? Really. But Sarah, take your time. There's no rush. I know, she smiled. But Dad, I'm glad you're here to watch my back, just in case. Always, I promised. Always. And I meant it, because that's what love looks like when you've lived long enough to know that sometimes the greatest gift you can give someone is not permission to fly, but the safety net that catches them if they fall, and the patience to let them fly again. Marcus Thornton never contacted Sarah again. The Portland police opened an investigation based on the evidence I provided, but he'd left the state before they could charge him. Last I heard, he was in Phoenix, using a different name. I sent the information to Arizona authorities. Whether they act on it is out of my hands. But Sarah healed. Slowly, painfully, but she healed. She learned to trust again, more carefully this time, but without cynicism. She learned that being hurt doesn't mean being broken. And she learned that having someone who loves you enough to do the hard things like waiting, like watching, like letting you make your own choices even when it kills them, is worth more than any investment could ever be. As for me, I learned that retirement doesn't mean stopping. It doesn't mean turning off the instincts that kept me alive for 33 years on the force. It means using those instincts for the people who matter most. And nothing matters more than keeping your children safe, even when they're grown, even when they think they don't need you. Especially then, That's what fatherhood looks like when love turns into armor. And I'd do it again in a heartbeat.